Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here, and welcome to a new episode of Gold Goes to the Movies. Just the 4 movies this week, but 2 big, spectacular ones from the cinema. Wicked Part 1 and Gladiator 2. Huge films that we can dive into. And 2 much smaller movies that are currently available on streaming. Anna Kendrick's directorial debut, Woman of the Hour, and also another true story in Ordinary Angels. So let's fly straight into Wicked Part 1 to see what I did there. So a bit of context to my cinema trip to watch Wicked Part 1. Mrs. Gold and I both went along to this one, but we were coming in from different angles into this. So I loved Wizard of Oz as a kid, honestly. One of my favourite films as a child, watched it probably 1,000 times. Had the video, the VHS, it was constantly in the machine being watched over and over again. I honestly would go to a friend's house and they would want it. We'd watch it. We'd watch it so many times. Probably wore out the VHS copy. I was also in the far smaller crowd that enjoyed, even if it was terrifying for a kid in the 80s, of Return to Oz. Which, yeah, if you've ever seen that, it's not like Wizard of Oz. It's a far, far darker tale, although I guess sometimes if you look back as an adult on Wizard of Oz, some pretty dark moments in that as well. But having said all of that, as I grew up, I'd never actually seen Wicked the musical. Didn't read the book that was loosely based upon. I think it came out 1995, I think it was as well. And even the original books that kind of created the whole world that all of that came from. For some reason, my entire childhood was kind of based in really loving that movie, but never really explored it later until heading to the cinema this week. Whereas my wife, completely opposite. She read that book from 1995, watched Wicked the musical as well in the West End. So she was fully aware of everything. Well, I say fully aware. She watched the musical about 10 years ago and seemed to have forgotten most of the stuff in it. So she was probably coming in certain aspects as freshly as I was. But yeah, I can now very confidently state that once I've seen part 2 next year, I'm definitely going to watch the musical and probably going to read all of the books available, because I love this movie. I really did. It took me by surprise, I've got to admit. I don't know whether it was just because it took me back to my childhood, which potentially that's what it was, perhaps. It really just, yeah, absolutely grabbed me. It's just such a big, bold movie. Look, I know the big Defying Gravity song. I'm sure most people do, even if they're not aware of what kind of Wicked is. They've probably heard it at some point. And I did kind of think that this might be a better movie for my wife to kind of enjoy, knowing the musical. But yeah, we just both absolutely loved it. I cannot recommend it enough to people who, even if you haven't seen the musical, don't worry. You kind of, everything feels fresh and new, and that's kind of a good thing as well. It is visually stunning, this movie. It's so bright and it's so bold, like I said. There's tons of little Easter eggs and nods towards not only the musical, but the original movie, the Wizard of Oz itself, and the music, which is composed by Stephen Schwartz. It's just fantastic. He was composed for the original musical, but it's just some wonderful music. And there's this little thing that he's made public. I don't know how long ago he did, but I've only seen it this week while kind of looking into the whole movie and the musical and everything. It's very cool. So the first 7 notes of the song Unlimited, which is in Wicked, the musical and the movie, are actually the first 7 notes of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. But you kind of wouldn't really know because of the way it's used. It's very clever with a different tempo and leading into other notes. Have a little listen to that. If you didn't realise that, I'm sure anyone that's watched the musical is going, yeah, we know that. But if you haven't, and you're like me coming out of it, it's like, it blows your mind. It is very cool. This is all directed by John M. Chu, who brought us the terrific Crazy Rich Asians, In the Heights as well. Both of those films, firm favourites in the Gold household. And with Wicked, he's just gone up to another level. You just can't keep your eyes off the screen. Not only because it's so bright and colourful, but you're also looking around the screen. There's so many little details and things going on in the sides, and just like I say, little nostalgic tips of the hat, if you'll pardon the pun. It's been a long time in the making, this movie. 12 years it's been in development since it was originally announced they were going to make it. 2012 was when it was first announced. And I mean, I guess it's eventually kind of benefited the director too, because not only did he get the gig, because obviously 12 years on and he's had these terrific movies behind him, but he's also, I think, been able to pick two absolutely perfect leads for this film. I can't imagine anyone else in the roles now. There's been many actresses that have been kind of linked with these roles. I think Lady Gaga was one of the kind of more recent ones that was linked with it. But yeah, the ones they've picked were superb. I mean, you've got Ariana Grande. She's fantastic in this kind of really layered comic role, which I was absolutely not expecting. Like I said, no knowledge of the musical. Anyone going in knowing the musical will have known very well how the Good Witch from The Wizard of Oz is in the musical, because clearly she's a very different character to kind of the little snippets we see of her in The Wizard of Oz. She's very funny, Ariana Grande. I think looking back, obviously know her very, know music. It's played in our household all the time. My wife and daughters love a bit of Ariana Grande music, but in terms of an actress, I know she kind of did stuff as a kid. I think, was it Disney shows or certainly children's shows, and I didn't really know much about kind of bits and pieces in acting. She had a small role. What did she have? A small role in something recently? It's gone out of my head. But this kind of feels like the big move into acting for her, unless I'm absolutely forgetting another big role she's done. For me, and my knowledge, which admittedly is quite limited, I think this is the one that's kind of going to break her into the acting fold, because she's very funny, very, very good. However, the absolute star of this movie, without a shadow of a doubt, is Cynthia Erivo. She is amazing as Elphaba. They've managed to cast someone who not only can keep up with Ariana Grande's just ridiculous vocal ability, but she's also a phenomenal actress. Every moment she's on screen, you are absolutely captivated by what she's doing. She's just brilliant. She emotes so much with her eyes. I don't think I've seen someone manage to convey so much emotion just in little looks. And sometimes you hear that and people write that in reviews, and it's almost, I don't know, this kind of slightly cliched thing. But watch this movie. Her eyes are she's got this kind of big, like I say, really emotive eyes, and it's just amazing, and especially in a movie like this, it conveys so much, and there's so much happens over the course of this movie to her character as well, because she's got 2 hours and 40 minutes. It's a long movie, but it kind of flies by, and a lot of that I think is to do with the performances of these two leads, who absolutely kind of spark off each other, but also have this kind of really lovely relationship which goes in all these different directions as the movie goes on. With Cynthia Erivo, there's real talk that she could be up for a Best Actress Oscar when they're announced. And I can see it. I can absolutely see it, because anyone that is going to be a bit snobby and think, a musical shouldn't be winning any awards like this, they have in the past, and I can absolutely see it with her, because yeah, it's just an incredible kind of performance. And I should also point out another thing that I thought was incredible when I only learnt this afterwards. All the singing in it is live. What I mean by that is anything that's been recorded in the moment is not only the acting, they're not lip syncing or anything like that. That is also the vocals in the moment. And they did that very deliberately to honour the women over the years who have played these two roles, and the rest of the cast as well, but who have played these roles over many years, whether it's Broadway, West End, anywhere around the world. And they kind of didn't want to cheat by just doing it in the movie in bits and pieces and having the sound added on later and lip syncing. And I mean, they're doing this even when there's moments where they're thrown around in the air. And I've seen kind of clips of them, Cynthia Erivo being kind of hurled around in this device that makes it look like she's flying and she's singing at the same time. And, we see sometimes singers struggle to sing and dance at the same time. They're having to do that and also be thrown around in these big action scenes as well. It's truly impressive. And if Cynthia Erivo is to win the Oscar, I think she'll get, isn't it they call it, an EGOT? Because She was in the Broadway revival of The Colour Purple, and she won a Tony Award, Emmy, and Grammy for that. She's been nominated for an Oscar before for Harriet 5 years ago, as well. Also, I think it was double Oscar nomination because she also wrote and performed the song "Stand Up in It." So yeah, she would complete the set, as it were. And yeah, these two incredibly talented women at the centre of this movie absolutely make it. It's just a fantastic kind of anchor for the whole film, their relationship. And there's a lovely little nod as well during the movie, which I'm not going to spoil, but to the two ladies who originally kind of formed that relationship on the Broadway stage when Wicked first was released as a musical. And that's very nice. And there's a whole strong supporting cast as well. You've got Jonathan Bailey as Fiyero, Michelle Yeoh as, I'm going to get this right, Madame Morrible, Jeff Goldblum as the Wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz, Ethan Slater as Bok, Marissa Bode as Nessa Rose, and Peter Dinklage turns up as a goat. And he brings his Tyrion accent to very much it is Tyrion. I was sitting there in the theatre. I didn't know he was in it. I was sitting there in the cinema and I'm thinking, I know that. Where do I know that goat? Where do I know that goat's voice from? And I was just playing it over and over in my head. Even in the next scene that he wasn't in, I'm thinking, and you suddenly realise it's Tyrion from Game of Thrones. Of course, as I turned to my wife, because she doesn't watch Game of Thrones, and I said, he's an angry elf. To which she immediately understood who I meant. But obviously in Elf, he doesn't sound anything like that character. So yeah, the one that probably gets the most to do out of that supporting cast is Jonathan Bailey of Bridgerton and Broadchurch. He's very good. He kind of catches the attention of both the leading ladies in this film. My prediction is, I don't think it's the wildest prediction in the world. It's probably quite a safe one. A little bit like Glenn Powell, I think Bailey is going to be a little like the leading man of the moment next year, probably. He's coming off the back of this when he's very good, very charming in it. But next year, he not only has part 2 of Wicked, but he also has Jurassic World Rebirth, the newest kind of chapter, as it were, in the Jurassic World, Jurassic Park saga, I guess we call it. And yeah, I think this is all going to cement him as a bit of a leading man going forward, the British actor. And yeah, just one other thing I have to say about this movie. I try to remember now desperately whether it's the final shot of the movie or it is one of the final shots of the movie. It is one of the most incredible images I've seen put on screen, and in the way it not only is it a striking, remarkable image, the culmination of so many different things put into that image, but also with the music and the note, and it is just perfect. If you've seen it, you know what I mean. If you haven't, honestly, watch it. It's just a phenomenal way to end, and it's only part 1, the ending. There was an audible wow from the audience in the cinema. It was very cool. This is what I love sometimes about watching movies like this on a big screen with lots of people around you, is that kind of feeling as if you're part of something when you see them. I love watching a movie on streaming in the comfort of my own home, in the dark, in the living room, watching it. But sometimes a film at the cinema is just something else. I would also very much say beware of spoilers for this film. I know that sounds ridiculous to say when a musical has been around for 21 years that you should have to say that. But for someone who had no idea of what happens in part 2, I've just simple reading about this movie has very quickly, there's no spoiler warnings, you very quickly get told what is clearly going to happen in part 2. And it hasn't ruined it for me because I'm fascinated to see how they get from point A to point B with various things. But yeah, I was a bit like, no. But yeah, and it's stupid on my part because, let's be honest, it's been around for so long. It is, it's like probably telling someone how E.T. ends or something like that. And, it's been around a long time. But yeah, absolutely fantastic film. And yeah, it's made $366 million at the box office already. It's only been 11 days of release when I'm filming this, so I can see it sticking around for a while because it's going to appeal to all ages. When we were going in for the previous screening, there were an absolute massive group of school kids coming out of it as well. And I can see it, apart from maybe 1, possibly 2 scenes, I can see that it's not going to really, I don't think it's going to be too scary for kids. I don't think so, unless my mind has blocked any parts out, but it's making a lot of money. It's already one of Universal's top 20 highest grossing movies ever. It's past How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I don't know whether they have the rights to do stuff as I can imagine it all being like a theme park thing now. In the Universal theme parks, whether they have the rights to do that. I know there's certain things where certain companies have movie rights to do stuff, but don't actually have other rights beyond that. So yeah, I don't know, but it would be very cool to have someone that has Oz as part of the theme park. I would definitely want to wander through that. It's already the highest grossing movie already based on a Broadway musical. There's a little fact for you. And it's likely to soon enter the top 5 musicals of all time at the box office. And it is excellent. Like I say, I really recommend this. Even if you're just someone like me who loved The Wizard of Oz as a kid, it's very accessible to everyone. Whatever your Oz access has been in your life. It doesn't even make sense. Hopefully you know what I mean. So yeah, that's Wicked Part 1 and loved it. Absolutely loved it. It's one of my films of the year, and we're coming towards the end of the year. It really is an absolute belter. Next up is another big movie that's been in development for a long, long time, and that is Gladiator 2. I went to watch this by myself. Mrs. Gold isn't really a swords and sandals fan. Ridley Scott back at the helm. There's no Russell Crowe this time. Instead, it's Paul Mescal, an Irish actor who's taking on the sandals and the sword in the lead role. I actually have a family connection to Ridley Scott from way back. My mum used to be a production assistant on. It was in, I think his company was called Ridley Scott Associates, RSA. And many, many, many years ago, she was a production assistant that would kind of sort out the crews that would work for his and Tony Scott, his brother's commercials. This was all done while they were trying to raise money towards their own kind of movies that they were trying to make early on. And she has very vivid memories of both the brothers and working for them. She was very much kind of behind the scenes at a desk, just sorting out the crews and ringing around, getting people involved and everything. But yeah, that's my little connection, or my family's connection to the world of Ridley Scott. I always remember really being annoyed as a kid. We had this photo in the house on one of the tables of my mum dressed in Victorian clothes with this other gentleman who was a quite famous British actor in the 70s. His name has gone out of my head. I think he was in a classic old British TV show called Are You Being Served? I can't remember if it was Frank Thornton. It might have been. It was someone like that. But anyway, it used to bother me a lot as a kid that there was this photo of my mum and this man, and she appeared in a Kodak advert in the 1970s. I don't know why she wasn't an actress or anything, but she just appeared for some reason in this advert. I don't know whether it was in like the background or what, but yeah. And there was a photo of the two, and I used to hate it as a kid because I was like, oh, it looks like she's married someone that's not my dad. I used to always turn the photo around, and it used to bother them, or bother her greatly. But yeah, it bothered me even more. But yeah, sorry, little aside there. Probably something I should be lying on a couch talking about rather than saying into a video. But yeah, so she worked for Ridley Scott and Tony Scott as well. And but back to the present. Gladiator 2, slight diversion there. It is a big epic movie, and I am a massive fan of the first film. I loved it. I went to the cinema many times. It might have even been 3 times to watch it when it first came out. Was it 2000? I think it came out 24 years ago. Wow. So this movie has kind of been kicking around pretty much from the moment that movie came out was a big smash. I think they toyed around with various ideas. Most of them involved trying to bring Russell Crowe back, despite the fact, you might know what happens towards the end of that movie. Again, I'm hopefully not spoiling something from 24 years ago. But instead, that's not what happened. 2 decades on, and we get a kind of a continuation of sorts of that story. I think it's 16 years after the original it's meant to be set. I say continuation very loosely because, let's be honest, it's kind of a retread. It's another version of the original story, just with a few different subplots, and Rome and the Roman Empire is in a different kind of place at this point. But essentially, it's kind of Gladiator again. Look, it looks great. It's got some great action shots as well, action scenes. I enjoyed it, but absolutely nowhere near the degree that I loved the original. And I don't know if this is a controversial view or not. One of my I don't know whether it's a main issue or not. I don't know whether they just decided, look, we're never going to be able to replace Russell Crowe, so we're just going to kind of come at it as maybe slightly more of an ensemble piece, perhaps. And so you've got Paul Mescal as the I guess the lead within this kind of ensemble cast. He's a very good actor. He's very watchable. I just never felt he had the presence, the screen presence that Russell Crowe did in the original. Every moment Russell Crowe was on screen in Gladiator, he just dominated it. And you believed that men would follow Maximus Decimus Meridius to the ends of the earth. He was their leader. And I just never really got that with Paul Mescal's Lucius. To be absolutely fair, perhaps it's a different kind of journey for his character. Maximus was a guy that I think, if I remember correctly, was a general and kind of was knocked back down and had to kind of work his way up as a gladiator, whereas Lucius is kind of coming from nothing and rising his way up. So you're seeing his journey to being someone that can lead men. But I don't know. Like I say, he's a terrific actor. And I think he's going to have a great career. And he will be a leading man in other kinds of things, I think. Whereas in this, just didn't have that presence for me that Russell Crowe did. And at times with his voice, I kind of felt like he was almost trying to do a Russell Crowe impersonation. I'm sure he wasn't. That wasn't the intention, but that's kind of how it came across. Look, it may well be that Russell Crowe, by the time he did Gladiator, was kind of reasonably established in movies. You know, he had LA Confidential, which was so well received. The Insider had come out before that. Virtuosity with Denzel Washington, who is in Gladiator 2. The Quick and the Dead, which I think he was more of a supporting actor in that one. And Romper Stomper, which was the one he kind of came into the kind of our consciousness with, I suppose. Pedro Pascal is in Gladiator 2. He's this kind of celebrated general character. I don't think his presence actually helped Paul Mescal, because when Pedro Pascal is on screen, you've got that star vibe, you've got that quality. And again, I really want to stress, I'm not saying that Paul Mescal is not going to be a star. I think he is. Just feel like in a movie like this, I just feel like as soon as Pedro Pascal came on screen, you kind of think that, that's the guy that kind of fills the screen, and you could kind of imagine that in another universe, he could have been Gladiator. He could have done it, I think. He's very good, Pedro Pascal. He kind of plays this quite conflicted character. And yeah, he is kind of the Russell Crowe of this movie, because, in a weird way, because he is this celebrated general. And yeah. I mean, there's a couple of returning actors and actresses from the original film, and I may have missed, there may be others as well. Connie Nelson's back. Derek Jacobi's back as well. He was in the original. There's a couple of new emperors now. You've got, obviously we had Joaquin Phoenix in the original. Now we've got Joseph Quinn, who you might know from Stranger Things, and Fred Hetchinger, who was in White Lotus Series 1, if I remember correctly. They play these sibling emperors who essentially are running the Roman Empire into the ground. They're both very effective, kind of hammy, but I think that's kind of the point. I think they're meant to be. The British actor Tim McInnery turns up in a good role as well. I really like him. He was always in Blackadder when I was growing up and watching a lot of that as well. He was in Notting Hill for the international audience. He kind of pops up in everything. He's a very, very good British actor. Rory McCann, who plays the Hound in Game of Thrones. We were speaking about Tyrion and Peter Dinklage from Game of Thrones, but the Hound, Rory McCann, is also in this as a general. It's weird because he has so much kind of prosthetics on his face to play the Hound. When you actually see him without that, you kind of like, oh yeah. It's kind of that moment of realization. All very good, but there is one kind of scene-stealing star of this movie who chews up the scenery, and that's Denzel Washington. He is the best thing about this movie by a country mile. The scale of the movie, the epic nature, the set pieces, the action within the Colosseum. Honestly, you can throw a water-filled Colosseum with sharks, there's ferocious monkeys and rhinoceroses, I think there is at one stage as well. none of them keep your attention as much as Denzel Washington as the ambitious Macronus. He is brilliant. Denzel in full-on villain mode is brilliant. He is just so good. It's that kind of, he just kind of comes across like some Shakespearean villain. He's so good. And this is the first time he's been in a Ridley Scott movie since American Gangster, which was his highest grossing movie until this one came along. He's very selective with his work nowadays, Mr. Washington. He's I feel I should call him Mr. Washington, Mr. Washington, because he's that good. He kind of picks things that are either really Oscar worthy or you kind of know are going to be a bit of a smash. Gladiator 2 is certainly one of those. Made $322 million so far. And he may well get a Best Supporting Actor nomination at the Oscars for this one. I think he's that good in it as well. I think it's about $80 million away from this being Ridley Scott's most profitable franchise movie. Bearing in mind he directed 3 Alien movies as well. It's so it's really difficult because I'm kind of coming across in some points as if I didn't like the film, which isn't the case at all. I did enjoy it, and it's very watchable, and I think a lot of people will enjoy watching it. I just think if you love the original, you're kind of going to go into this and kind of feel like it's not giving you anything different. It's almost, is it necessary? And clearly for the studios with the money they're bringing in, it is. You know, it's been a decent few weeks for cinemas and production companies and everything and studios. They're making a lot of money right now. But I don't know. The original was a classic for me. A 5-time Oscar winning movie and many, many more nominations. It kind of had 24 years to make something that could be very different and its own thing. And I kind of feel like it still ended up being a little bit of a retread with more CGI and stuff like that in it. But like I say, far from a bad movie. It's a good movie. It's just not a great one like the original was. But I'm sure other people will see it in a different way. But so that's the 2 biggie movies. That's the 2 epics on the cinema screen. Next up is a much smaller movie, but definitely probably more worthy film, and that is Anna Kendrick's directorial debut, Woman of the Hour, which is based on a true story about a serial killer Rodney Alcala, who turned up in a dating show called The Dating Game in 1978, right in the middle of his killing spree. It sounds absolutely crazy that it was even allowed to happen, and this movie kind of explains to you just essentially how it was possible, really. This movie actually came out a year ago, but it only made its way onto Netflix, I think 6 weeks ago or so. This was one I sat down with my wife, both enjoyed it. I say enjoyed it. Enjoy it is a strange word, bearing in mind the subject matter. Appreciated it, and the way it was made is probably the best way to put it. It's got plenty of suspense. Because I think mainly because you know it's all true, and that kind of just shocks you to your core, some of the events that happen. It kind of exposes, I guess, the misogyny as well that was really prevalent to allow Alcala, it might be pronounced, to kind of get through this process, to be on a dating show on TV, despite all the things he was doing in the background. And I think there's this kind of real deep-rooted sexism that is kind of really shone a light on in this film as well, that kind of existed within the whole, I guess, television industry at the time, and maybe just in the world in general, and also the vulnerability of the women that he targeted outside it, which we see a fair few number of instances of. So Anna Kendrick also stars in it. She plays Cheryl, who's this actress who is a bit down on her luck in trying to get parts. So she's convinced to go on this dating show episode, and Alcala is one of the 3 men that she's got to choose from. And yeah, I mean, Anna Kendrick's very good. She kind of brings her trademark kind of, I just guess, movie appeal to it, and the way that she kind of tries to fight back against the way she's being treated on this TV show and change it to kind of the better for her. And this is all happening within it, and the kind of, you almost know, but in the background is lurking this serial killer who is kind of part of the show, and she has no idea that he is. and Alcala is played by Daniel Zavato. He is very menacing. He's very good. We see him kind of playing like the charming side of his character, and we also see the horrific side of his character as well in play. And we also see kind of I guess, the mess that was his mind, I suppose, as well. And one of the women he targets as well, outside of the whole game show thing, is played by Autumn Best, and she's excellent. I don't want to talk too much about her role because I think the moment I stray into that, I'm probably giving too much away to anyone that isn't aware of the actual true story and what happened. Tony Hale's very good as Ed, the game show host, who kind of gets his comeuppance in certain ways. I should also point out that Anna Kendrick donated her pay from this movie to Rape, Abuse and Incest National Network and the National Centre for Victims of Crime, so that because she didn't want to feel that she was profiting from anything that involved sexual violence victims. So yeah, I think I was really impressed by the fact that a lot of big stars, when they do their first directorial debut, they call in a lot of favours. They get their mates in. They get all their other big stars to be in it. Quite a lot of the time you see that happen. And she hasn't gone down that road. She's kind of gone for a lot of actors and actresses who you might have seen in various other parts, but they're not stars. And I think that makes, especially when it's a true story, it makes it all the more believable and kind of terrifying, because you don't identify these actors really with anything else. Like I said, they've been in many other things, but for me, they were utterly believable in these roles, rather than me thinking, oh, that's that movie star, that's that movie star. Oh, yeah, he was in that movie with Anna Kendrick and stuff like that. And I'm really hoping this is a bit of a gateway movie for her now to kind of move into other stuff, because she's really clearly got a kind of a talented hand about her in directing. It's really feels like a kind of a period piece at the time, and yeah, it's a very well told story as well, and just shocking, really. What kind of exposes not only about the way things work, but also what actually happened, and it's some terrible stuff as well. Very important topic, and she deals with it with a really kind of balanced analytical hand. It's very good. It's very good indeed. So the other true story, that was on Netflix. This one was on Sky. I watched it on. It's called Ordinary Angels. Again, with my wife as well, and then this one you can enjoy, kind of more properly enjoy. Although I'm about to say the true story, and it's going to make me sound like you can't. It's a true story of this hairdresser who had problems of her own, who rallies this community in Kentucky to help a widowed father who's really struggling. He's just lost his wife and his 5-year-old daughter. She's got the same congenital liver condition that I'm pretty sure that's what it is that the mother had, or her mother had. And she's essentially heading in a very bad direction. And he's got hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of medical expenses from the care for his wife as well before she died. This hairdresser who's never met the family, this is all a true story, just starts to try to help. In terms of a cast, the double Oscar winner Hilary Swank plays the hairdresser who, like I say, has problems of her own. She's got drinking issues, got family issues. And the father, Ed, is played by Alan Ritchson of Reacher fame. He's kind of playing this guy that's essentially just being buried under a mountain of problems, really, and trying to kind of keep his head above it all while grieving and looking after his 2 little girls as well. They're both excellent. They're both superb. They're both terrific actors. Nancy Travis, I think she's his mum, not mother-in-law, I'm trying to remember, but she's kind of the maternal character in this. I will always remember her from Three Men and a Baby and 3 Men and a Little Lady, which came next as well. And the 2 little girls are brilliant. They're played by Skywalker Hughes and Emily Mitchell. What a brilliant name Skywalker Hughes is. They're both terrific, 2 terrific little actresses. And for Alan Ritchson, this came after the first series of Reacher, and he was getting a million different action movie scripts sent to him because he is this big, enormous guy who's brilliant at Reacher. It's one of my favourite shows. He's terrific in it. And he didn't want to do all these action movie roles, really. He saw this script came in, he felt it showed a little bit more to his acting. And he's absolutely right. He's very good. It's a very kind of difficult kind of character to play because there's so much sadness there, but also trying to keep it together with the family. There's lots of different sides to this character. He actually said in an interview he did that he kind of had to prove himself to Hilary Swank because in the kind of production side of it, before they started filming, he kind of felt like she was being polite to him, but maybe not the chattiest, and maybe he was just thinking, oh, who's this TV guy I've been lumbered with? And then they did their first scene together, and apparently she just completely changed, absolutely opened up, really kind of realised how good he is, and kind of, yeah, they kind of just got on like a house on fire at that point as well. And this could easily be, I think, one of those old style TV movies that maybe a little bit forgettable. You watch maybe like on a Sunday afternoon or something, and never hear of it again. But these two actors just they just elevate it, take it to another kind of level. And it's got a really suspense-packed ending. It was really surprising. You really are like, no, no, kind of thing at certain points, and cheering them on. And yeah, a good film can make you do that, I guess, as well. And I must admit, I didn't realise until after watching it, it technically falls into the Christian drama category. I'm not sure I've ever watched a movie that fits into that category. And I kind of looked it up, and the director, John Gunn's work, it's all, or certainly a lot of it, is based in that kind of, in religion, really. But I was kind of thinking back over it, and I don't really think, I wouldn't have known, and I didn't, that the film was in that genre at all. There's not really that much religion in it, other than those little kind of moments that you have in most movies when it's about kind of, I don't know, death and grieving and people dealing with problems and not understanding why so much bad things are happening to them. But it never really felt like there was any kind of real religious context to the movie. So maybe that's kind of why it, I don't know. But yeah, I just didn't see it myself. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing if there was, a bad thing if there isn't. But yeah, I was surprised when I realised it was in that category. And I'd imagine if you watched it, you probably would think the same. But it's just a really sweet, remarkable, true story of someone helping a family they've never met. And then there's a lovely bit at the end of the movie when you kind of see the real life people involved as well. It's very cool. It's very good. And just kind of very heartwarming. And it made $20 million from its short time that it was out. Only $10 million budget as well. And I think it will do well on streaming. It's the second half of the film is very much set in snow. And I can imagine in the build up to Christmas, I think a lot of people will probably watch this. It will feel a little bit like almost like a Christmas movie, but not. So yeah, that's the quartet for this episode. Really, that's the four films, four very different films in different ways. My pick of the bunch was definitely Wicked Part 1. That was an unexpected delight for me. Really kind of came away singing all the tunes and all that sort of stuff. It had exactly the effect I think it was meant to have on me. And we've got plenty more movies coming up in the weeks ahead. I noticed today, I was watching Shrinking, which I love on Apple, and I noticed on there Blitz is out, the Steve McQueen directed film, so I really want to watch that. The Amy Adams film Night Bitch is out at cinemas this week. Craven the Hunter, I want to see whether that's great or whether it's a complete mess, comes out next week. Lord of the Rings, The War of Rohirrim is out. That was difficult. Which is like an animation which comes from Peter Jackson in conjunction with I've forgotten the director's name. But that's kind of being very much hyped up. There's a load of family movies on the way ahead of Christmas as well. You've got the new Wallace and Gromit movie, Wallace and Gromit Vengeance Most Foul. Mufasa the Lion King comes out. We had the trailer before Wicked last night. The other night. Sonic the Hedgehog 3, that's also on its way. These animations are smashing it right now. Moana 2 is like making so much money. Couple of non-kids movies on the way as well. That I'm really looking forward to. I think they both come out New Year's Day in the UK. Nosferatu and We Live in Time with Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh, which looks very good. That was another one we had a trailer for actually as well. So yeah, plenty to look forward to and plenty that I've enjoyed. I would say I enjoyed all four films that I watched this week, which isn't always the case at all. But yeah, really good. So on that note, it's time to head off, I think. So as always, stay safe, stay healthy, look after yourselves, and keep watching those movies.